Hello, hello, welcome back. You are watching the Zenith Glow Astrology channel. My name is Christina and I am an astrologer. Thank you so much for being here. So happy to have you. We have lots to talk about today. I'm very excited. This is a very exciting week. We enter the peak of the Lionsgate season this week, and we have a whole lot of astrological events that are concurring along with that. Before we get into everything, I'm going to ask you all please to like and subscribe if you haven't already, because that supports me big time and I would greatly appreciate your support. I want to keep growing, so please like and subscribe. You have no idea how much it helps. It's a lot. And as well, I just want to remind you all as well as well, that I have an astrology course for beginners that is available now. I will post a link to that below. There is still a discount code going for that until August 12th. You can get $25 off of the course through August 12th to kind of help celebrate the Lionsgate season. So if you are new to astrology or you want to hone your astrology knowledge, try to organize everything that you know, really get into the basics, the foundations of astrology, this course is for you. So please check the link below for that, and I will also post the promo code where you can get $25 off of that. All right, we have that out of the way. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you, and I'm so excited to talk about what I'm going to talk about today. So there is a lot. This could take a long time, but I have a feeling it's not going to, because time has been running a little bit differently. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed a little wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey thing going on in recent weeks, in recent months even, but especially in the last couple of weeks during this Lionsgate season? That is certainly not an accident, and it is reflective in the astrology as well, and we're going to talk about that. But again, perhaps this will actually not take me very long. We'll see. We'll see what we end up with. But this video is technically about the full moon in Aquarius, which is taking place on August 9th. The full moon in Aquarius will be exact at 3:54 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and it will be at 16 degrees 59 minutes of Aquarius, which is just under 17 degrees. This full moon is special because it is happening one day after Lionsgate, because Lionsgate becomes exact, or the peak portal day for Lionsgate is August 8th, 8/8, which obviously is filled with its own special significance and symbolism. Then we have the full moon on the 9th, and then immediately following the next day on the 10th, Mercury stations direct in the sign of Leo, opposite of this full moon. Now, not exactly opposite, but I mean by sign, it is opposite. So we got a whole lot of energy converging at once. Do you feel it? Do you feel it coming in? I feel it. It's definitely been building. So let's see, where do we start with all of this? Well, there's a lot happening. Let's go to the chart first, because you all know how I love to go to the chart, at least to get it out of the way. Okay, so first we're going to just look at the chart for this event. There we go. And yeah, there's quite a few aspects going on, and they are significant. So again, we have the sun and the moon opposite of each other. Alongside the moon, very, very close, we have the goddess asteroid Pallas Athena conjunct with the moon at 15 degrees of Aquarius. So she's in a very tight conjunction. She is the only additional object that I have included in this chart, just to try to keep things a little simple, and because she has such a prominent influence at the time of this full moon. We also have multiple aspect patterns going on. Most significantly, we have, so I'm actually going to take this away for a second. So this way you guys can see what I'm talking about. I took extra steps this week to help you all. So first of all, we have something called an envelope aspect pattern. So this is the same chart, it's just drawn over. by me. So we have an envelope aspect pattern, which is exactly what it looks like, a series of sextiles and trines connected by oppositions that are peaked with a minor grand trine. So that's all a mouthful. Mercury, which is stationing direct, and as you all know, when planets are stationed, they are extra powerful. So Mercury in Leo, holding extra strong energy, will be trine with Saturn conjunct Neptune, also retrograde in the sign of Aries. Mars will be in Libra, exactly opposite of Saturn conjunct Neptune. That is going to be trine with Pluto in the early degrees of Aquarius. Pluto sextile with Saturn Neptune. Saturn Neptune is sextile with Uranus. Uranus is sextile with Mercury. And then Mercury is sextile with Mars. And then we have the oppositions, Mercury opposite of Pluto. So all of that together creates this aspect pattern known as an envelope. And because it kind of looks like an envelope, who would have thought? Ultimately, this is a beneficial and more harmonious aspect pattern because it's all connected by trines and sextiles. Everything is in harmonious elements. The only tension coming in is through the cross in the middle between the oppositions. Okay, so we're going to take that one away. So the next prominent aspect pattern during this full moon, we have a kite configuration involving pretty much all the planets I just listed. It's just a different way of looking at it, but we do have a kite aspect pattern here. So we have all of our major outer planets which have already been forming these minor grand trine aspect patterns to each other, but they are now being brought into aspect with Mars, which has shifted into the early degrees of Libra. Mars entering the play here changes the entire aspect. So before we just had the tippy top tiny triangle between all of these. Mars entering Libra there at the beginning degrees then creates a grand air trine. Sorry, tripping over my words here. Creates a grand air trine. So Mars in Libra, Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini form a grand air trine. And then we get Neptune conjunct Saturn. You guys can all just laugh and watch me struggle to get this out. We have Neptune conjunct Saturn in Aries at the apex of this, okay? Now, having Mars in the picture actually puts that in opposition to Neptune conjunct Saturn. So it takes the fluidity of that trine and it gives it a little bit of tension. It gives it a little bit of grit. So we have a reason to do something with the energy. In other words, whenever we have a harder aspect come into the play, it gives us a little bit more motivation because as much as trines and sometimes sextiles are easy, harmonious, fluid energy, we're not always motivated to do something with them because it's so easy, right? It's like so relaxed. We're almost like hypnotized or put to sleep because it's so fluid. It's not really calling our attention, right? Because things are running smoothly. I've mentioned this before, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Well, in this case, Mars opposite of Neptune conjunct Saturn becomes our squeaky wheel. So that opposition brings in tension and it is calling us to do something with the energy. And kites have this implication of destiny involved in them, some kind of destiny or some kind of purpose, right? Some astrologers describe this as like a bow and arrow, and that opposition point gives us the tension for pulling back the quiver and shooting towards the apex, okay? So, as well, I don't even know if I'm going to get into this, but I did want to share that I also did a tarot reading on this full moon, and as I was doing it, I was kicking myself, going, why am I not recording this? Why am I not recording myself going through this? Because everything I said was very spot on with the astrology, even though I wasn't like thinking about the astrology per se as I was going through it. But everything that came out was in alignment with the astrology. So I might mention some points from this as well. We'll see where we land, but I did want to show you all that I at least did a tarot reading, and I learned an important lesson, which is even if you're doing something that's slightly out of your wheelhouse, you should put it out there anyway and take the risk, or at least I should. So next time I will definitely be recording that, but let's all come back here. Let's just relax. I'm gonna just have a sip of water. Okay. Okay. We chill? We chill. So, I decided, or I felt called, to look up some Sabian symbols because there's a lot going on, and I noticed some patterns happening in the configurations, and I could just feel it. Can you all just feel it? There's a shift happening right now. Do you feel it? It might be tense. You might still be feeling this like irritating holding pattern kind of energy. But there's also this sense that something new is burgeoning, something is peeking over the horizon as we speak. So things are beginning to shift. And the first thing I want to talk about, I have a lot of notes, you guys. When don't I have a lot of notes? But I really have a lot of notes for this one. So I think what I'm going to do is kind of go through my notes and then we'll just do a quick synthesis of what this all means at the end. But some of the interesting things I noticed. So actually going into this whole Mercury turning direct the day after the full moon, which again is the day after Lionsgate. So that's a whole lot of energy packed into a few days. So just as an aside, and this definitely came through the tarot reading, I strongly recommend that you all take some time to ground yourselves, take some time to rest, to slow down, to center into yourself during this time. There might be a lot of chaos going on around you, whether that's out in the world, which, yes, we know that's happening, or it could be just through relationships or dynamics that are kind of swirling around you. We still have this whole theme of shadows being released, final things that need to be pulled up, things that maybe we've been working on weeding already throughout this year are now being ready. They're now ready to be fully plucked, fully pulled out of the pot. But yeah, there might still be like a couple of little traces that are coming out. So, and you're probably already feeling that energy or seeing it manifest. We saw in the tarot reading, or I saw, me and all the voices in my head saw in the tarot reading that there is this theme of coming into balance. This is super interesting. Sorry, I wasn't even going to pull this up, but let's just do it, you guys. Let's just roll with it. So, there is this theme of balance being restored during this time. Like this entire year, we've been in this kind of being shifted to one side of things. We've really been working on the shadow work or the transformation, or things have just really been difficult, right? And maybe that's helping us, but it's still been like from an experiential perspective, it's been very difficult. So we find the balance of energy beginning to shift at this time. And we find at the center of this reading, and I think it absolutely is true for the energies, we find the theme of love. Okay, so go into the heart. This is Leo season. This is Lion's Gate. Lion's Gate, the alignment with Sirius, right? We're talking about higher dimensional light codes, wisdom and intelligence coming from higher dimensional beings coming into our consciousness at this time. Of course, that is going to be supported by this energy of love and unconditional love. And yet, at the same time, we have this energy of quarreling. We have this kind of Martian, aggressive, confrontational energy going on. We have this need to go into ourselves at this time, to nurture ourselves, to ground in nature, to connect to our creativity, because we are releasing at the same time that we are harvesting. Okay, this is a full moon, right? Full moons are culmination, harvest, release. We're doing both at this time. And we can see at the top of the reading here, we have this winter card followed by this happiness and joy card. We very much have been like walking through the dark. Things have been dark, things have been heavy, things have been difficult. But winter, snow, a purification process has been taking place, right? And all the while, we have been called to keep our eye on the North Star, to keep our eye on the light, and to follow that intuitive path leading us through the darkness. We now enter the time where we step into the sunshine, into the light, right? This is a full moon. Things are illuminated. Joy is illuminated. It is all there if you tap into it. But be aware that there are energies and forces and types of consciousness that don't want you to do that. So it is essential that you ground into yourself, into your own knowing at this time, and literally grounding in nature can help you to do that. But as well, connecting to your creative center, tapping into creative self-expression, into joy, and then remaining centered in love. And at the time of this full moon, we are being really centered not only in love, but also in our truth. We may experience an opening of the throat chakra, but we also just might experience an activation of it or an initiation of it if it's already open or whatever. But we are communicating our truth. We are getting in touch with our soul's purpose at this time. Okay, we are aligning with our purpose as an individual, but also as a collective humanity, both at the same time. So we are safe. We don't need to be fearful, but we need to understand that there are energies out there that don't want us to connect with this light. And that is why it is essential that we do, that we place our focus where we want to go, because this is a new beginning. We are branching. This is a portal, right? Lionsgate is a portal. Having a full moon, conjunct with a portal at the same time that Mercury is stationing direct, it all seems like it's a pretty potent time energetically to shift timelines or to shift consciousness to the point where our reality shifts, okay? But we are cultivating ultimately greater stability and security at the end of all of this. But we got to go through the portal first. So I hope that all made sense. Okay, so let's talk about this Mercury retrograde bit. That was basically the tarot reading, all right? So again, that was all through cards. This is the actual astrology part of it. So Mercury will station direct. Technically, it's going to be at 4 degrees, 15 minutes of Leo. But like I said, I decided to pull up Sabian symbols because it felt significant to me. One thing that I realized right away, I thought, 4 degrees of Leo, that sure sounds familiar. Oh yeah, remember last April at the end of the month when Pluto and Mars formed their opposition? And we had that super tense final conflict? Because again, as a reminder, Pluto and Mars came into opposition 3 times since the fall of 2024 because Mars was going through a retrograde cycle at that time. It started in Cancer and then it moved into Leo, and Pluto was in Aquarius, and then they eventually formed this third and final opposition at the end of April, right as Pluto was stationing retrograde. Okay, and Pluto is still retrograde. So when they did that, it was at like 3 degrees, 54 minutes or something like that. But when we're speaking Sabian symbol, because when we look up Sabian symbols, we always defer, we round up to the next degree. when we're looking for what the meaning of the symbol is. That means that at that time, during their opposition, Mars was at the Sabian symbol for 4 degrees of Leo. Okay, and I actually wrote an entire article about this called Touching the Guru's Feet, and I will post that article if you feel like exploring those themes and going back. That might have some relevance for you right now because Mercury is stationing direct at the Sabian symbol for 5 degrees of Leo. So Mars was 4 degrees of Leo. Mercury is now stationing direct at 5 degrees of Leo. Seems pretty significant, does it not? And Mercury has to do with our logical minds and our perception and our communication, right? So it is interesting because I think my own interpretation of this is that something at the same time that Pluto and Mars were concluding something because it was their third and final opposition to each other, Pluto was also stationing retrograde at the time. And I think something was also introduced at that time. I think Mercury is now bringing the next chapter of that story as it stations retrograde as it stations direct at the next degree up from where Mars was. And then Pluto is going to station direct on October 13th. I think when Pluto goes direct, we're going to get the final chapter of this story, but more on that later. But again, you see how everything is connected, right? They're all connected to each other. But going back to the Sabian symbol, so the Sabian symbol for 5 degrees of Leo is symbolized by rock formations that tower over a deep canyon. Now, the interpretation of this symbol lies in seeing things within a larger context, which is super interesting because if you go back and look at the 4 degrees of Leo that Mars was at when it was in opposition to Pluto, that degree, that Sabian symbol, related to feeling the need to prove oneself, whether you were proving yourself to yourself or to other people. And it was very much focused in the self. So we now come to the 5th degree of Leo for Sabian symbols, which is where Mercury is, and Mercury has to do with perception. And keep in mind, Mercury just went through this whole retrograde where we're going back over things and we're integrating stuff into our consciousness. Now it emerges direct with this new realization at the time of the full moon. Realization, culmination, release, right? And Lionsgate. And this has to do with widening our scope of reality and looking at things in a larger context outside of the personal self. I think this is happening in 2 ways, probably more than 2 ways, but 2 ways stood out to me. Number 1, considering the juxtaposition of our individuality within the context of greater humanity or community at large. So suddenly we're not just focused in our own little personal individual bubble, we're also thinking about how we fit into the community that we are in or the worldly humanity community that we are in as human beings, right? Number 2, we are also shifting our perception as the Earth humanity community within the context of the greater cosmos and galactic community. So I believe that this is bringing in some, perception shifts away from just, oh yeah, this is Earth and this is everything happening on Earth, to, whoa, wait a minute, we're not just Earth. We are in a solar system. We are surrounded by other planets. We are surrounded by fixed stars. We are surrounded by galactic beings. We are surrounded by spiritual beings. And suddenly looking at ourselves within that greater context, okay? So I think that's part of what's coming through Mercury stationing direct at that Sabian symbol. This is one of the themes. I have also noticed themes, and this is just arising through synchronicity lately, okay? Before I looked any of this up, this was happening synchronistically with me. This concept of time and the nature of reality itself and our relationship to it is changing. our perception of time and the nature/structure of reality itself is changing. This very much reminds me of Uranus and Gemini, because that is about deconditioning our perception, particularly related to worldly truths, right? Because Gemini is about like the local day-to-day stuff, whereas, Sagittarius is more about pulling out of that and zooming out, widening the lens, right? Uranus is deconditioning long-held views that we have had about this is the way the world works, this is how I see things. It's broadening that scope, or really it's actually like breaking it down completely so that we have to rebuild from scratch. At the same time, we have Saturn conjunct Neptune in the early degrees of Aries, right? Aries is the first cardinal sign, and therefore it's part of the world axis. So whenever we have planets, but especially outer planets, making aspects at those early degrees of the cardinal signs, but especially Aries, because Aries is the first of the cardinal signs, it represents shifts on a global scale because it's the world axis. And it also represents the start of a new cycle. Now, we've already been in this because they've already been conjunct, they've already moved into those early degrees. They are retrograde right now. They're going to go back into Pisces briefly until next year when they shift back into the sign of Aries, and then they'll be officially in that sign for the duration of their transits. But that energy of Saturn conjunct Neptune, among other things, relates to dissolving pre-existing structures and time itself, because Saturn is the lord of time, okay? The lord of karma, but also in mythology, Saturn is Kronos, and Kronos is time. And time is part of the construct or the structure of our 3D reality, or the 3D matrix, which constructs our reality. Neptune is the planet that dissolves things. It's also the planet of illusion. And then, Uranus, which is making an aspect to these two planets, is the planet of insight. And so, and epiphany and higher consciousness. And so we have this recognition that time is not what we think it is, what we have believed it to be. And so time itself is shifting, because if you know from quantum physics, which I am not an expert in, but I do casually like to engage with it because I find it really interesting. From the realm of quantum physics, everything that we observe is affected by our observation. So if you perceive time to be one thing and you accept that as truth, that's the way that you are going to experience time. And that's what's going to manifest in your reality. But if you start to shift your perception of what time is, then time is going to shift. Ooh. Yeah, we're getting real Doctor Who in here. At the same time as all this, we've also got Pluto and Aquarius. And again, going back to that kite pattern, all of these planets are in a minor grand trine with each other. They are all connected to each other. They're all at the early degrees of these signs. And Pluto in Aquarius is transforming, right? Pluto, what we know to be true, truth, authenticity, and finding our place in the community, because Aquarius relates to community. It's also galactic community, because Aquarius is going to take us into the brand new, unexplored arenas of reality. And so we're also being brought beyond what we have currently been focusing on, right? So again, and all these planets are interacting with each other through harmonious aspects, meaning they're giving tools to each other. They're communicating easily. They're kind of like, enthusiastically egging each other on and supporting one another in their efforts. So these are all things, though, that are coming up at the time of this full moon. So these are ongoing themes, but they kind of get like highlighted at the time of the full moon, because then we have Mars moving into the early degrees of Libra and finishing off that kite pattern that we looked at. Mars is bringing in some tension now. And this is super interesting. So remember, because Mars was part of the whole Pluto-Mars opposition, and Mars was at that 4th degree of Leo when it formed that opposition. Now Mercury's carrying us into the succeeding degree at 5 degrees of Leo. So we're shifting away from proving ourselves and this focus on the self to starting to broaden our perspective and look at the greater community or galactic community, depending on which lens we're looking through. But now Mars is at this technically, it's the 2nd degree of Libra, because again, with Sabian symbols, we round up. And the 2nd degree of Libra as a Sabian symbol, this is intense. So the symbol for 2 degrees of Libra is light of the 6th race transmuted to the 7th. Light of the 6th race transmuted to the 7th. That is kind of the more modern interpretation. The original interpretation, which came through Dane Rudhyar, is the transmutation of the fruits of past experiences into the seed realizations of the forever creative spirit. Whoa. The transmutation of the fruits of past experiences into the seed realizations of the forever creative spirit. It goes on to say, centered sense of self as a creative power. This is really interesting because that came through my tarot reading. I had 2 cards next to each other that came through the same deck. One had to do with grounding, and the other had to do with creative expression. And I knew right away when I looked at them that they were relating to grounding into the self and into the creative heart as a means of finding your way through the energies. And so this Sabian symbol goes on, the power to create new realities is real and so potentially dangerous. It must be rooted firmly in our awareness of who we are, being authentic in every moment. I find this really fascinating because it's in Libra, but it almost sounds like an Aquarian theme. And this does go into Aquarius. This whole full moon, Lionsgate, Mercury direct thing is rooted in truth and love. If you wanted to like boil it down to something really simple, to a couple of key words, we could say truth and love. And so this is now about looking to the past, the 6th race, to transmute the light of the 6th to the 7th. That's the modern day Sabian symbol for this, right? Light of the 6th race transmuted to the 7th. Looking to the past to bring that wisdom and that knowledge forward in order to transform the present and the future. So then we have, again, this theme of time converging in one place, right? Because we have the past, we have the current, and then we have the future, and it's all coming together at once. And this might be something that we experience now as we experience the wibbly wobbliness of time. We are having the past come up, and that's just, even in an Astro 101, by the way, it's in my course. If you go to look at my course, I talk about this. In an Astro 101 kind of way, when we have retrogrades, especially personal planet retrogrades, it's very common to have the past resurface to be re-examined, right? But now we're having it in this almost more visceral way, almost a more literal way. Like time is warping and melting and gooing together, and we are confronting the past, but we are also pulling out seeds of wisdom from the past to apply to the future. This happens on a personal level, but we've also got this galactic, worldly community level, right? Because we're also zooming out of the personal and going into those higher, expanded perceptions. And so there's also this idea of recognizing the wisdom of the past. And I actually made a little note for myself and I said Stonehenge because we're talking about Aquarius, which is about future technology and innovation, which, by the way, is very much hitting us front and center right now, isn't it? Out in the world, talking about AI and robotics and all of the different forms of technology that are rapidly expanding and accelerating at this time. Welcome to Pluto and Aquarius, folks. We are barely in it and we got 20 more years of it. But there's also this idea that the past isn't really what we think it is, right? And again, dissolving the structures of Saturn, Neptune, starting a new cycle, changing the way we look at things, Uranus and Gemini, questioning what we've been taught and what we've been told, right? We're changing everything at this time. Everything is coming into question. And we are rebuilding something completely new. And even the concept of time itself is coming into question. And we are connecting with an inner creative power by centering within ourselves and connecting to our past selves, which may actually be our future selves, right? Because really, time, what is time? What is time? Can anyone tell me what time is? Because it's many things, and it's definitely more than what we've been taught, right? We've been boxed into a very linear, limited concept of time. And that is starting to shift, dissolve, and change. And so we can look to technologies of the past. And I wrote down Stonehenge because we have all these old structures, the pyramids and Stonehenge and the temples and the node points around the earth. Obviously, our ancestors knew things that we have been denied knowledge of in our modern time. Well, these things are surfacing now. And isn't it interesting that, again, full moon in Aquarius happening in succession with Lionsgate? Lionsgate is that time when the pyramids align with Sirius, right? It's that same technology. So these things are all coming up right now. And then I went ahead and looked up 2 degrees of Aries, which is that Sabian symbol for the for the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is opposite of Mars and Libra. Because again, Mars and Libra, which is holding the tension of that bow and arrow, right, before you release it, that is that symbol of light of the 6th race transmuted to the 7th. So that's where we get centered in ourself and in our creative power by looking to the past to bring that light into the future. You look ahead at I'm saying ahead because I'm picturing myself standing on the zodiac wheel where Mars is, looking across the wheel at Aries and Neptune. Sorry, guys. But you go ahead to 2 degrees of Aries, and the Sabian symbol for that is a comedian entertaining a group. And it's like, what does that have to do with it? I wrote down, releasing the fullness of who we are, regardless of the mirroring, aka judgment of others. So it's really about kind of poking fun at the restrictions we place on self-expression and truth and authenticity in our society, which is what comedians do, right? Comedians call out truth or injustice or whatever, and they do it through humor. And so, kind of like the fool in Shakespearean works or, different. Oh my God, you guys, there is a hummingbird at my window. Wow. You can't make this stuff up. I wish I could show it to you. I haven't seen a hummingbird at all. I just realized, I'm like, wait, I haven't seen one here. That's so crazy. Right as I'm talking about the Fool, and right as I said the Fool, I remembered that my tarot reading had the Fool card. Can y'all feel this energy? And again, the Fool is a new beginning in the tarot. The Fool transcends the whole wheel, right? It's the number 0 because it is both everything and nothing. And so I can't believe that just happened. Whoa. Okay, I'm getting too excited here. But yes, so there is this theme that we tend to suppress who we truly are out of fear of being seen by others and being judged by others. And this 2 degrees of Aries is like, nah, you release the fullness of who you are. And we can laugh at the people who have a problem with it. Not in a derisive way, but in the way that humor has the ability to transform, right? Humor is extremely powerful. There's a reason why in the last few years we saw huge censorship of comedians, okay? Humor is much more powerful than people give it credit for, and it is a form of creative energy as well. And so, going back to the Libra side of it, being centered in the self, our truth and authenticity, as an anchor point for evolution, as a creative source of power, okay? And then we have this new beginning starting as we begin to release the, what is that word? Like when you're tied down, the strappings. I don't know. That's a terrible word. I don't know why. I just like it went out of my head. It was there and then it went out of my head. Maybe language itself is something that's going to be coming into question here. I mean, I think it already has the last few years, but again, that's another Gemini thing. But yes, we're sort of releasing this hold that's been placed on us that we technically place on ourselves because we fall into the traps of the illusion of needing to be accepted by other people in order to be happy. But that's not really true. And we are coming into the true truth, the true. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Cloud Atlas, but it's a little reference there for you. Yeah, the true is really that we must anchor in the self, right? And that's where our creative power lies. And that's also where we connect to our past and our future. And again, it's all happening now because time is not what we think it is. I'm not saying time doesn't exist at all, but I'm saying that it's not what we think it is, right? It's so much bigger and more complex. Whoa, and my computer just did a weird flashy thing. What is going on, you guys? Hummingbird at the window and wow. Okay. So, I feel like my spirit guides are like, "Can I get an amen?" Um so let's real quick look at the Sabian symbols for Uranus and Gemini and then Pluto and Aquarius because those are also at those early degrees, right? So, and I'm not going to go super in depth in this. I just thought it was interesting to note. Uranus at 2 degrees of Gemini for the Sabian symbol is symbolized by Santa Claus filling stockings furtively, which is essentially a belief in the universality of abundance. I find this super interesting for 2 reasons. And I'm sure a lot more if I sit here and think about it longer, but we won't do that. Mercury is stationing direct. Uranus is in the sign of Gemini. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is associated with the magician in the tarot. The magician is the master manifester. Therefore, Mercury is our ability to consciously, intentionally, with focus, manifest. Okay? Uranus is deconditioning the way that we perceive reality itself. And so, at this degree of Gemini, Uranus is helping us to see. Sorry that my computer is shaking. My dog is scratching and shaking the table. Uranus is helping us to see that abundance is universal, right? And I believe this is going to be one of the themes of having Uranus transit through Gemini. Now, lots of us are already aware of this concept in a general sense and maybe have put it into practice, but I think it's going to really be much more nuanced, much more heightened, and it's going to be much more powerful as Uranus moves through Gemini. But it's this idea that our words and our language manifests our reality. And again, I know you know that, from like a basic manifestation 101 kind of thing, but I think it's going to develop in ways that we didn't even anticipate, and it's going to hit us on levels that we didn't even recognize. Because again, the entire structure of reality as we know it is dissolving and being rebuilt from the ground up. And so there is this idea of the universality of abundance. And isn't that interesting that that theme is being highlighted as we experience Lionsgate and as we experience this full moon? And full moons are times of harvest, right? So again, we have abundance, right? We have manifestation. And then going to Pluto, which is technically at the 3rd degree of Aquarius as far as Sabian symbols go. This is symbolized by a deserter from the Navy. A deserter from the Navy, which is refusing to comply with inappropriate authority. So yet again, another theme, and keep in mind that all of these planets that I'm describing Sabian symbols for, with the exception of Mercury, are involved in that kite aspect pattern, which is forming at the time of the full moon, okay? So, again, we have this theme, refusing to comply with inappropriate authority. Doesn't this all kind of go really well together? It's like we've been dictated to about our reality. This is the way it works. This is how you have to function within it. This is what you must do to be happy, successful, accomplish whatever. And there's this part of us that's saying, no, nah, bruh. Like, that's not true. That's not true. I don't believe that's true. And we start to see the very construct of reality itself begin to dissolve as we connect with higher consciousness, as we connect with love. Because the version of reality that we've been given, that we've been sold, is not congruent with love. And at the heart of everything, of real truth, of the true truth, is love. So all of these themes are coming up right now. By the way, none of this is the full moon. I'm almost done, you guys. Let's see. 47 minutes. I guess I was wrong about this being short. So, the full moon itself is conjunct with Pallas Athena, the goddess Pallas Athena. We'll just call her Athena. So Athena will be at the 16th degree of Aquarius as far as Sabian symbols are concerned. And then the full moon will be right at 17 degrees of Aquarius. So they're right there conjunct with each other. So the full moon Sabian symbol is a watchdog standing guard. This is a complex symbol because it has multiple meanings depending on which way you look at it. On the one hand, and this comes through James Burgess's website. So I highly recommend if you're interested in Sabian symbols. I mean, Dane Rudger wrote a wonderful book on it called The Astrological Mandala, and you can check that out. But James Burgess has taken it to a whole new level, and I really love the language that he uses and the way that he fleshes out these ideas. So if you want to dig into it deeper, go to James Burgess's Sabian symbol website. Just go do your little search engine thing and you will find it. But a watchdog standing guard, it's this idea that we live in a collective community that has certain rules in place that keep that community functioning. But because we are not all individually connected, because that gives us a sense of anonymity within the community, there are people that will take advantage, that they will not follow the rules, and that they will intrude upon our boundaries. It very much reminds me of this Modest Mouse song. I don't know if you know that band, but there is a Modest Mouse song that says, "You're not invisible inside of your car." That I have thought about many times when I've been in traffic and driving around. Because people do kind of get this idea like, well, I'm inside my car, no one can see me, they don't know who I am, I could just drive away at any moment. And yet, we are all part of this community. We are all connected and we are influencing each other. And so, on the one hand, there is this theme of do the right thing. There are rules. And I don't mean rules like you gotta follow these rules because the government laid down the rules or whatever. I'm talking about humanitarian rules. Like, don't kill another person. That's not good. You know what I mean? If someone's suffering and starving, don't steal their food. Don't take what's not yours. Stuff like that. Okay. So there's these rules for harmonious living that we all follow as a collective community, but there's going to be people that violate those rules because we are such a large community, they can't just be pointed out. If there's 4 people rooming in a house together and one of them steals the other roommate's yogurt, the process of elimination is much smaller and they're more likely to be held responsible for the theft. But if you're, living in a community of 10,000 people and they steal the yogurt, that's going to be a lot harder to prove, right? So it's this idea that you must protect yourself from intruders who would break those rules. But it's not just on a physical level, it's also on a psychic level. This is where it gets really interesting. So it's also on a psychic level because we do have people in our reality, people in our reality who break rules or who intrude on other people's boundaries on non-physical levels, right? If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, that's okay. Just hang in there. We're almost through this. So it's this idea of psychic self-defense. It's this idea of having boundaries, but by part of those boundaries involve intentionally focusing on the light and choosing to see the light and choosing to be the light. And that is what creates more of that light and it offers you protection. So again, full moon in Aquarius, things are being illuminated at this time as well. So this is one of those themes. We are having this concept of intrusion highlighted and doing the right thing, doing things because it is right to do. So that's on a personal level, that's a community level. And then again, remember, we're zooming out our lens and maybe looking at things from a cosmological or galactic level as well. Now, Athena is at 1 degree back from that, 16 degrees Aquarius. The symbol for this is big businessman at his desk. And I instantly thought of that Talking Heads concert. And yeah, and that big business suit that he wore. But anyway, what song was that? Doo-doo-doo. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. So this Sabian symbol has to do with management of resources. And then taking it a step further, because again, we have the mundane level, which is the worldly level of this, but then we also have the spiritual level. So it's about being really good at managing resources, but taking those skills of managing resources and applying them to a spiritual context. And when James Burgess wrote about this, he talked about placing attention on true values and not getting caught up in material illusions. If it lacks value, then it does lack value unless it confers depth of character. So again, we're not talking about doing away with all material things or not having abundance and rejecting. It's nothing about that. It's more about the intention behind how you approach these things, right? And again, you're like, wait a minute, why are you talking about this now? You were talking about dogs a minute ago, and now you're talking about some big dude sitting at his desk. And the Talking Heads. What's going on? What I'm saying is that together, these two themes are fused as ideas of illumination at this time that might be coming into our consciousness as we move forward. Okay. And again, having Pluto and Aquarius, these might be themes that arise over the next 20 years. And we are beginning to look at these things now because Aquarius is very much futuristic, very future focused, looking down the road. Okay. So management of resources, maybe you're really good at managing your resources, but maybe you're being called to put those skills into a more spiritual context now. That's what I'm saying. If it lacks value unless it confers depth of character, whatever you are applying your skills to. There's going to be a highlighting focus on this idea. Now, very last, talking about Pallas Athena as the asteroid goddess. She was born from the crown of Jupiter or Zeus, and she was born fully formed. And that is symbolic of the fact that she is naturally she is naturally imbued with wisdom. She is the goddess of wisdom. She is the wisest of the goddesses, we could say. And so, being in the sign of Aquarius and being conjunct the full moon, once again, this has to do with futuristic perception. And because Aquarius also relates to broadening our lens of reality itself, that means widening the lens. We're not just looking at it from an earthly perspective, we're looking at it from a galactic or cosmological perspective, right? But Pallas Athena in Aquarius is seeing future possibilities and holding awareness of deep time. So here this theme comes around once again. Deep time is, I think it's a concept that Friar Richard Rohr introduced. I think I read it in his book, Falling Upward. Read that many, many years ago before I was awake, and it totally changed my perception of reality. I recommend it. But it's this idea of realizing that time is more than just what's happening to you right now. There's deep time. There's time from this huge, zoomed out cosmological perspective. Like, we've been around for thousands of years. Maybe we've been around for millions of years. Maybe the Earth has been around for billions of years. Maybe it's been around way longer than we've been told. But time is massive compared to these little tiny linear boxes that we've been living in. And so Pallas Athena is highlighting for us, being conjunct with the moon, this futuristic possibility and holding an awareness of deep time. And then being conjunct with the moon, there is also an intensification of intuition melded into that perceptive wisdom ability that she carries. So we have wisdom and then perceptive insight coming together, right? Confluence of those things. And Pallas Athena can relate to psychic ability, emotional wisdom, clarity of the feminine, and potentially a conflict between mind and feelings. So if you're experiencing more challenging versions of this energy, you might find yourself confronting that, like my thoughts versus my emotions, or what my intuition is telling me, right? We might have that coming up to be released right now, because remember, part of that tarot reading and just part of the energy of full moons in general relate to releasing what's no longer serving us. If we've been overly attached to the mind and the need to control and working under the illusion that we do have control, because that's kind of an illusion, right? We might find ourselves sort of quarreling. That was one of the cards from the tarot reading, between our mind and our intuition. Okay, so that's a theme that's being highlighted right now. Very last, the occult meanings of Pallas Athena relate to prophecy, oracular wisdom, kundalini activation, cellular regeneration, illumination through the crown chakra. And she relates to the magical will to create or control reality. There's that control word again. Through the use of creative visualization, using the natural laws to manifest. So again, we have this going back to Uranus and Gemini, and also just this Neptune conjunct Saturn. I mean, it's all there. It's all part of it. Shifting perception of time and timelines and what is possible. Because again, you can only manifest what you believe you can manifest, right? So if someone somewhere along the way convinces you that you can't do something, you're not going to do that because you believe you can't. This is part of what's coming up now to be released, releasing our attachment to limitation. And then this is the last thing about the occult meanings of Pallas Athena. this ability to shift perception and alter time by seeing through time, being able to see far into the future and far into the past and realizing that they're all happening right now. It seems magical to the uninitiated, but really, it's actually scientific. And again, that kind of ties into this Pluto Uranus stuff that's going on. And again, what we know to be true, what we've been taught. To those who don't know better, it seems magical, but it's actually following the natural laws of the universe, right? So, ooh, mama. Thanks for hanging out with me this far. I hope it was fun. And I kind of feel a little bit like that character from Twin Peaks. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the reboot. Dr. Jacob. I forgot his name. I used to be really good at remembering character names and actor names and things like that. It was like one of the skills. Like, no one could defeat me at the game Seen It. Do you guys remember that game? Or at like Trivial Pursuit questions that related to movies and things. And I have filled my head with so much astrology and so much other knowledge that all that stuff has just gone out of my head. So, if you know who I'm talking about, in the Twin Peaks reboot, Dr. something. I feel a little bit like that guy right now. Getting real passionate. But the point to all of this is these are all themes that are coming up right now. I believe they're actually going to carry through the rest of the month, but I think that they are really being highlighted right now. And again, that's coming through this full moon, but it's also it's also coming through Mercury stationing direct and then having Lionsgate simultaneous to all of that. So there's a lot of energy. There is a lot happening through our crown chakra. There's a lot happening through the mind, through perception, the pineal gland, through the throat chakra. So, because there's a lot going on up here, it's really important to ground down here and to really be in your center. And I don't know about you all, but I have received a lot of messages. Slow down. Slow down and let yourself receive it. And again, that's just kind of like a general theme of having a personal planet in retrograde anyway, right? And just because Mercury is stationing direct at this time doesn't mean that we're not in that Mercury retrograde energy still. We very much are. In fact, it's being like crescendoed right now. So absolutely slow down. Let yourself feel into this energy. Get into your grounding within yourself, whatever that means. If you need to connect with nature, that is a wonderful tool for assistance, or it's a wonderful support. And let yourself connect with your creative heart and connect to love and get in touch with your inner truth. That is going to help you through the intensity of this energy, but not just get you through it. It's going to really open you to the blessings and the gifts that are on hand at this time. Okay? So, this was a lot. Thank you again for hanging out with me and for letting me go all crazy in my way that I do, and letting me get into all the details of the Sabian symbols and everything, and lots of stuff that came out in this one, guys. Once again, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I really, really appreciate your support. And if it resonates with you, if you want to learn astrology, I do have that course available now. Once again, I will post the link and the promo code. You can get $25 off that Foundations of Astrology course through August 12th this month. Thank you all so much. I wish you so many blessings and such a wonderful week as we move through these energies. May it serve you well. I love you all, and I will catch you next time. Bye.